Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Evelyn Lee and here are today's top stories. Officials in Waukesha confirm at least 5 people died and another 40 are injured after a driver plowed through a parade in a red SUV Sunday. Candidate for Texas Governor Democrat Beto O'Rourke comments on President Biden's immigration laws. He says the White House shows a lack of urgency and echoes campaign platforms he'd prioritize if elected. Health officials may change the definition of being fully vaccinated to include booster doses. Biden's chief pandemic advisor explains the adjustment may come if the data supports it. It's been a mysterious, decades-long journey to find the remains of former Teamsters boss Jimmy Hoffa. The search turns to a site near a former New Jersey landfill. On Sunday, a man in Waukesha, Wisconsin, drove into a crowd during a Christmas parade. Officials there have confirmed that at least 5 people have died and another 40 are injured. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
According to witnesses and video footage of the incident, the driver plowed through people in the parade in a red SUV. Footage of the attack shows the SUV speeding into the parade behind a school marching band and others who were partaking in the parade.
Next thing I heard were screams and turned my head and saw the car come and plow into the band that was just past my balcony at that point. It hit at least 2 people right away, rolled over both of them, and then continued down the road to by People's Park, which is at the end of the block, and then kept going. It didn't stop.
Other witnesses told local media about the people they saw lying on the ground after the incident. Waukesha Police Chief Dan Thompson said that the suspect's vehicle had been found and a person of interest is in custody.
The vehicle struck more than 20 individuals. Some of the individuals were children, and there were some fatalities as a result of this incident. We will not be releasing information on fatalities at this time while we are working on notifying the family members of the deceased.
One witness reported that the driver ran over several elderly women while firing a gun out the window. Some witnesses reported hearing gunshots. Thompson confirmed that a weapon had been fired at the incident, but police don't think any shots were fired from the vehicle. Waukesha County Executive Paul Farrow on Twitter asked for everyone's prayers, saying, "Please pray for our community tonight," and that this is an unspeakable tragedy affecting us all. Keep the families affected in your thoughts. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And Texas Democrat Beto O'Rourke announced plans to join the state's 2022 gubernatorial race last week. In a Sunday interview, he said President Biden shows a lack of urgency on the crisis at the southern border. That's after getting asked whether he would invite the president to assist in his campaign. Let's take a look.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
In a Sunday interview on CNN's State of the Union show, Texas gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke signaled distance from the White House in next year's state campaign. That's amid poll numbers showing just 35% of Texans supports President Biden. The former congressman criticized the president for what he called a lack of urgency in pushing to revamp Trump-era immigration laws.
I don't think we've seen enough urgency when it comes to rewriting our immigration laws to match the needs and the reality that we see, especially in our border communities.
He also blasted current Governor Greg Abbott, accusing the Republican of taking advantage of the border crisis.
We also expect more of our governor, who's using the border right now as a photo opportunity, scapegoating and vilifying immigrants, asking Texans to, quote, defend themselves and take matters into their own hands from this invasion, as he describes it.
O'Rourke announced his candidacy for governor last Monday. He set his sights on becoming the first Democrat in 3 decades to win a statewide race in Texas. His interview came after Mexican authorities reported finding 600 legal migrants hidden in 2 boxcars traveling through the Mexican state of Veracruz last Friday.
This campaign in Texas is not going to be about Joe Biden. It's not going to be about Donald Trump. It's not going to be about anyone from outside of our state.
Over the weekend, O'Rourke also reiterated his pledge on Texas gun control. It echoed an earlier statement he made during a Houston debate as he ran for president in 2020. O'Rourke said he will stand firm on that view if he's elected governor.
The CDC is endorsing booster shots for all adults. Biden's chief pandemic advisor, Anthony Fauci, says federal health officials could modify the definition of fully vaccinated. That's if data supports the necessity of boosters.
In a Sunday interview with CNN, White House pandemic advisor Anthony Fauci said the definition of being fully vaccinated might get an adjustment and would include getting a booster shot if data deems it necessary.
And that's what we say, and that's what we mean when we say we let the science and the data follow. So we're going to take a look right now at what the durability is of the booster, and we're going to follow people who get boosted.
The CDC currently defines fully vaccinated as 2 shots of a Pfizer or Moderna regimen, or 1 single shot of Johnson & Johnson. Fauci explained that so far the definition won't change, but acknowledged it could happen as his team continues to monitor the durability of booster shot protection.
People should not be put off by the fact that as time goes by and we learn more and more about the protection, that we might modify the guidelines. That's what we've been saying all along. By follow the science, things change, and you have to follow the data.
CDC data shows that more than 59% of the U.S. population has been fully vaccinated against COVID-19, the disease caused by the CCP virus or Chinese Communist Party virus. But comparing CDC data for the previous year to Johns Hopkins University's full pandemic death toll count, the virus-related deaths reported so far in 2021 have already surpassed the figure from 2020 by at least 400.
And the U.S. Marine Corps is set to report the worst vaccination record among military branches. That's as thousands of active duty personnel are poised to miss the service's November 28th deadline to get fully vaccinated.
Over 98% of the active duty force, and we have work to do with the reserve components, and they have longer timeline to get there, rightfully so.
About 91% of active personnel in the Marine Corps are fully vaccinated, with 94% partially vaccinated. Service members are considered fully vaccinated 14 days after getting a single Johnson & Johnson shot or 14 days after their second dose of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. That means it's too late for many to complete the vaccination process by the deadline. The Navy has the highest vaccination rate for active duty personnel at 96.7%, followed by the Air Force at 96.4%. An Army spokesperson said 92% of active duty soldiers were fully vaccinated. The Army Secretary warned that soldiers and National Guard members who refuse to get vaccinated would not have their service renewed unless they have an improved exemption. And Disney has dropped its COVID-19 vaccine requirement for employees at Walt Disney World in Florida. The move follows a change in state law. Following a special session by the state legislature, Florida companies are now blocked from mandating that all employees get vaccinated. Instead, workers are allowed to be exempt for reasons like anticipated future pregnancy or recovery from prior COVID-19 infection. Employees can also opt for regular virus testing or the use of personal protective equipment, which must be paid for by the employer. The new Florida law calls for fines of as much as $50,000 per violation for large employers. A Disney spokesperson told the Washington Post that more than 90% of its active Florida employees are already fully vaccinated. The U.S. Transportation Security Administration expects to screen about 20 million air passengers during the Thanksgiving period. The TSA said airport security checkpoints nationwide will be busy till the end of the week. Passenger volumes could even come close to pre-pandemic levels. Delta Airlines said it expects to fly up to 5.6 million passengers from Friday through November 30th. That's nearly 300% over 2020's 2.2 million for the period. But it's still below the 6.3 million passengers during the same period in 2019. United Airlines said it anticipates more than 4.5 million passengers during this period. That's about 88% of 2019's volume. United says it's adding about 700 domestic flights for Thanksgiving week. It says it will fly 87% of its 2019 domestic schedule this month. And protesters in Wisconsin marched against the Kyle Rittenhouse jury verdict over the weekend. NTD was there, and Jessica Beatty has the details.
Protesters opposed to Kyle Rittenhouse's acquittal gathered Sunday in downtown Kenosha, Wisconsin. About 100 people were there, mostly from Chicago, Kenosha, and Racine to the north. One local says she wanted to come see it for herself.
I kind of want to know what's going on in my city, too, and if I'm there, then there's no he said, she said. I know the facts because I was there.
She says she thinks the trial should have been handled differently. As for the verdict,
it's okay, but it's also unfair. So the verdict is, it happened. I mean, you can't really change it, but everybody has their own little opinion. I can see it from both angles, but I'm glad I get to see it face to face.
Another onlooker says either way the trial went, one side was going to be mad.
I think no matter what, people weren't going to be happy. But I think that democracy overall has prevailed and the system works.
18-year-old Rittenhouse was acquitted on all counts last Friday. He shot 3 white men at a protest in August of 2020. 2 of them died. Defense lawyers said all 3 shootings were in self-defense because he was being chased and attacked. But prosecutors said Rittenhouse was negligent and reckless and should have surrendered. Sunday's protest was peaceful, and there were no counter-marchers, only a few hecklers. Justin Blake was there. He's the uncle of Jacob Blake, a black man who was shot by a police officer in Kenosha and survived but is partially paralyzed. The shooting led to the Kenosha riots last year. Justin Blake held the flag of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. The group was founded by Marcus Garvey. He was a black separatist who met with the Ku Klux Klan because he believed black Americans and white Americans should be separate. Some protesters said they were not affiliated with the group and disagreed with its beliefs. According to an Epoch Times reporter who was there, Blake ended the protest by thanking the men who died while attacking Kyle Rittenhouse. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
A notorious union boss, Jimmy Hoffa, went missing in 1975. He's believed to have been killed by the mafia. And now the FBI may have finally found his remains. Here's NTD's Andrew Thomas with more.
It's been a mysterious, decades-long journey to find the remains of former Teamsters boss Jimmy Hoffa. The search has turned to a site near a former New Jersey landfill that sits below an elevated highway.
It is about 100 yards from where the PJP landfill once was. And in December of 1975, the FBI searched the landfill looking for Jimmy Hoffa. It was really their first real theory as to where Hoffa was.
The FBI says it obtained a search warrant to conduct a site survey underneath the Pulaski Skyway. The work was done in late October. Hoffa was last seen in 1975 when he was supposed to meet with reputed mob figures at a suburban Detroit restaurant. The latest effort appears to be tied to interviews given by a man named Frank Coppola. He says his father, Paul Coppola, explained how he buried Hoffa's remains in a barrel in Jersey City in 1975.
His father had buried Hoffa in this 8 to 15 foot hole, and then in a plain drum, 55-gallon drum, which is how he was shipped from Detroit.
Both Coppolas are deceased. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
State police make a huge bust in Oregon. Officers there seized about 500,000 pounds of processed marijuana. They discovered it during a 2-day raid of 5 industrial-sized warehouses in White City. Authorities say the marijuana carries an estimated street value of $500 million. Several people in the warehouse were detained, interviewed, and released. Officials say some of those questioned were migrant workers living in subpar conditions with no running water. Under Oregon state law, adults 21 and over may use cannabis within specified limits, but it's still illegal to manufacture marijuana without a license. Oregon legalized recreational marijuana in 2015. Aerial images reveal severe flooding in the Canadian province of British Columbia. It comes as Western Canada and parts of the northwestern U.S. are still recovering from record rainfall. The area experienced what's called an atmospheric river. That's when columns of water vapor are transported through the sky. This led to a month's worth of rain to fall in just a 2-day span. The massive floods and mudslides that followed destroyed roads, bridges, and homes, and cut 2 critical east-west rail lines that lead to Canada's busiest port in Vancouver. The disaster looks set to be the most costly natural disaster to ever hit Canada. Railway shutdowns have left exporters scrambling to divert shipments away from Vancouver and have highlighted Canada's supply chain vulnerability. And coming up, Secretary of State Antony Blinken expresses concern with two countries during the end of his Africa trip. He wants democratic elections in Mali and an end to violence in Ethiopia. And Austrians protest new stricter vaccine mandate and lockdown measures. The infection rate is rising and the government plans to force people to get vaccinated. That and more on NTD News.
You worked hard for your money. You invest in stability for your retirement and your family's future, to build and leave them with something greater. The next unprecedented financial crisis, political misstep, or unstable government can depreciate it all away. It was called the gold standard for a reason, the financial preservation of tomorrow. Diversify your assets against inflation, market volatility, and the unknown with real money. Hedge your wealth with the purest form of money, physical gold and silver. Because any currency printed on paper can be manipulated. What's backing up your IRA? Do what you need to do right now to be prepared with the Reagan Gold Group. Visit now, rggusakit.com, or call us at 866-912-1384. Receive up to $2,500 in free silver coins and a free safe with your new precious metals IRA. Call now.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. Before all this started, I had already written in my memoir, I dedicate this book to anyone that's looking for hope. Well, right now, we're all looking for hope. I believe that my story is going to bring inspiration and hope to everyone. By the time you're done reading my book, you will believe that with God, all things are possible. To thank you all for your support, I'm offering some of my best prices ever on MyPillow products, including this exclusive bundle. You get my book and these 5 MyPillows. They all have beautiful scenes and verses from the Bible, such as Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. This 6-pack bundle is regularly $219. Now it's just $99.98 and free shipping with your promo code. Go to mypillow.com and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below. Thank you and God bless.
A Haitian gang releases 2 Christian missionaries taken hostage in Haiti last month. The gang is still holding 15 other hostages from a missionary group, including 16 Americans, 1 Canadian, and 5 children. They belong to the Ohio-based Christian Aid Ministries group. They were abducted in October after visiting an orphanage. The incident is highlighting Haiti's kidnapping problem, which has worsened amid economic and political crises and escalating violence. A spokesperson for the Haitian National Police confirmed 2 hostages were released Sunday. Officials previously said a gang was demanding a $1 million per person ransom. In a video posted on YouTube last month, a man identifying himself as the leader of the gang said he was willing to kill the hostages if he didn't get what he wanted. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has wrapped up his trip to the African continent during his final stop in Senegal. Blinken expressed deep concern for the neighboring country Mali. That country experienced 2 coups in 18 months.
The Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, the region's main political and economic bloc, imposed sanctions on Mali's transitional leaders earlier this month after plans for presidential and legislative elections were abandoned. Blinken said the U.S., France, and partners in Africa want to see those elections happen and Mali return to constitutional rule through democratic elections.
That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking to. And this is ultimately about the people of Mali and their aspirations for democracy, their aspirations for peace, their aspirations for development, and respect for human rights. And we look forward to taking the necessary steps to resume the full array of assistance as soon as this democratically elected government has taken office.
Blinken also used the last leg of the tour to express concerns over the ongoing hostilities in Ethiopia.
We continue to push for an immediate end to hostilities without preconditions and humanitarian access for the millions of people in northern Ethiopia who need life-saving aid. And we continue to urge Americans to avail themselves of commercial flights out of the country, and we're providing assistance to them to do so.
Blinken's visit to Africa also included talks in Kenya and Nigeria.
And Australia will open its doors to fully vaccinated students and other eligible visa holders from the start of December. Vaccinated tourists from South Korea and Japan, as well as business visa holders and temporary working holiday visa holders, will be allowed entry. Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced the news on Monday.
The return of skilled workers and students to Australia is a major milestone in our pathway back. It's a major milestone about what Australians have been able to achieve and enable us to do. It'll mean a lot for the economies of our country, right around the country, who need those workers and want to see those students return.
The return of foreign students who contribute about $25 billion a year to the economy will be a major boon, especially to the education sector. Australia closed its international border in May last year in an effort to contain the spread of COVID-19. The closure led to many higher education facilities, which rely on foreign students, to lay off hundreds of staff. Entry rules began to relax in recent weeks to allow foreign family members of citizens to enter the country. So far, Australia has recorded around 200,000 cases and nearly 2,000 deaths, much lower than other comparable countries. The latest announcement comes a day after a group of international students arrived in Australia from Singapore as a travel bubble between the two countries came into effect.
And in Austria, thousands of people protested in Vienna on Saturday. That's one day after the country's government announced strict new virus restrictions, another lockdown and compulsory vaccination next year.
Noisy crowds, cheering, whistling and banging drums streamed into Heroes Square in central Vienna. Many protesters waved flags and carried signs with slogans such as "No to vaccination" and "Enough is enough." "I want my freedom back," says this woman. "One would think we live in a democracy, but now this is a coronavirus dictatorship." Roughly 66% of Austria's population is fully vaccinated against COVID-19, one of the lowest rates in Western Europe. Daily infections are still setting records there, even after a lockdown was imposed on the unvaccinated this week. That led the government to announce vaccines will be compulsory as of February 1st.
We are against the lockdown and the Austrian government policies as far as the coronavirus goes. This has been going on for 2 years and there is no end in sight. Something new is announced every day and we don't know what we can believe anymore. That's the situation.
Most protesters who spoke to the media, including the ones in this report, declined to give their names, though the mood was festive.
The Champs-Élysées Avenue in Paris was lit up in red for the Christmas season on Sunday. Paris's Mayor Anne Hidalgo and French celebrity singer Clara Luciani attended. Hundreds turned out for the occasion, contrary to last year when France observed a lockdown against the spread of COVID-19. At the time, only a handful of officials turned up for a ceremony broadcast live on the internet. The Champs-Élysées is considered by the French to be the most beautiful avenue of the world. It spreads over 1 mile and is lined with stores and restaurants. At the top stands the Arc de Triomphe, a landmark monument. And as much of the world gears up for the festive season, one zoo in Berlin has added 2 new residents to its ranks, and both are perfectly suited for the wintry weather. That's right, polar bear twins. Northern Germany's Rostock Zoo shared the first images of the bear cubs this morning, officially announcing their birth. In the short video, proud mother Sizzle is seen tending to them. German media, quoting the zoo, reported Sizzle was doing a great job looking after her 2 babies. Cubs at birth weigh between 1 and 2 pounds, a fraction of a grown female polar bear. According to Nuremberg Zoo, during pregnancy, the bears put on a whopping 1,100 pounds. Polar bear cubs are born almost naked, and it takes them up to 2 months to be able to stand on their feet. And that's it for now. Remember to catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.